Hello, guys. Welcome to the Dope Black Chick podcast. This is the space where we get real about healing, softness, power, and everything in between, especially in this beautiful second act of life. Now, today's conversation is one that my soul has been waiting for. We're diving deep into what it means for Black women to choose ourselves, to prioritize our rest, our peace, our health without guilt, without explanation. And today I'm joined by a powerful guest, Dr. Wylin Wilson, and she's a professor, scholar, and author of the transformative new book, Womanist Bioethics, Social Justice, Spirituality, and Black Women's Health, which are three topics. If you are a fan of this show, you already know we hit those regularly because they are all connected. And let me tell you, her work is a whole word, guys. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the 92% movement, the growing number of Black women who are choosing to step back from systems that don't serve us, including politics, healthcare, and toxic productivity. We're exploring how rest, self care, and spiritual grounding are not just wellness trends, they are revolutionary acts. So, Dr. Wilson, welcome to the show. I'm truly honored to have you here.
Thank you so much. It is just fantastic to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Can you tell me what led you to write Womanist Bioethics?
Yes, yeah. So it's two things in particular. Uh, One thing was I was born about 10 years after the desegregation of hospitals in this
Mm,
country. We talk about, you hear about all the time, desegregation of our public facilities, the educational facilities and restaurants and whatnot. Um, but we do not talk a lot about the desegregation of healthcare facilities, public healthcare facilities. And so, because of that was in 1964, by the way, right? And so because of that, um, I grew up hearing so many horrible stories from family members, from members of my church and the broader Black community about just, oh my goodness, terrible experiences in the healthcare system. Right,
yeah.
with the healthcare system. So that was one thing that was behind it. But then another thing was, as I got older and started doing work in this space. I was working in Tuskegee, Alabama, when I was at the Bioethics Center in Tuskegee University. And so I was working with Black churches and on health disparities, right?
Okay.
Yeah. But that space, Tuskegee, is right in the heart of the Alabama Black Belt. And so it's a
Hmm.
very rural area. And if you spend time in a rural area, particularly in this nation, you realize um, firsthand uh, the disparities when it comes to rural health,
Yeah.
population health. And let me tell you, the hospital there had shut down,
Mm,
and we've had so many hospital closings in rural America. There were 20 of them just in 2020. At the height of the pandemic, can you imagine
yeah.
hospitals shutting down in the one in rural spaces? These hospitals are not only the economic engine, but that's folks' only access to care. Many women in rural areas have to travel an hour or more just to
Yeah.
deliver their baby at a hospital. So being able to work in this environment and see the health disparities, particularly in these predominantly African American communities. It's
Yeah,
another.
I remember, I think it was 2020 or maybe 2021 here in Atlanta when I can't remember the name of the hospital, but there was a major hospital that closed. Like, Grady was already overrun.
Mm,
And it was just this question of where are these people supposed to go?
Thank you.
And it just closed down out of nowhere. It was so crazy. I do remember that. So yes, that was a huge conversation here in Atlanta not long ago about, the health disparities there, because a lot of people that were going to this particular hospital were needy, were in the poverty environment. So they needed that hospital. And then all of a sudden that hospital's gone. Now the wait times are longer. And of course, it was richly African American neighborhood. So there you go.
Yeah.
Like, where are we supposed to go? Where are all these people supposed to go? And they ended up just crowding out Grady. So yeah, I feel you on that. Okay, so what struck me in your work is how you highlight that bioethics, as it's traditionally taught, does not include Black women. And yet, we're constantly navigating life and death decisions around our bodies, our care, and our worth. So, let's talk about the 92%, right? Uh, if you're not familiar with the 92% movement, the 92% movement is really the response to the election, and 92% of Black women voted for Kamala Harris and voted for those choices that center Black women, or that would at least give us an ethical fight, right? And so the 92% of Black women decided, okay, we've tried, I'm tired, I'm done, and hung up their hats, right? So many of us saw that stat and thought, yes, that's me. What does this shift represent to you when you see Black women saying, you know what, I think it's time for me to choose me, and in this moment, even if that means sitting it out, I,
Mm.
I've got to choose myself. So what do you think? What does that represent? What does this shift represent to you?
Yes, yes. The shift, it represents so many things, right? For me, um, one of the things that the shift represents is just the sheer exhaustion, right?
Hmm.
That a lot of African Americans feel, and particularly Black women. You know, in my book, I look at the fact that Black women fare worse than women of other race and ethnic groups. They fare worse in almost every health indicator,
Yeah.
right? Um, but they are underserved in the healthcare system, and suffer health disparities severely, and so just the exhaustion of feeling unheard,
Hmm.
unseen, uncared for, is something that I think it really does represent, and also the exhaustion of dealing with the normalization of Black suffering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I talk. I was having a really beautiful conversation with some of my students about this in class the other day. I teach a womanist bioethics class, and so we are centering the Black women's experience in Black women's bodies, particularly in the healthcare system, and we were talking about the fact that just because something is common, right? Health disparities are common. The suffering of Black women in our economic and social systems and health institutions is common. It's not normal.
Yes.
But it has been normalized historically, and that normalization started in slavery and continues until now. And so I think it is representing, it is representing that as well. It just absolute exhaustion.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, we have to reclaim autonomy and peace
Yes.
ultimately. Like,
Yes.
it was like such a weight. And the fact that it was a collective feeling
Hmm.
lets you know that um that energy, energy is so real, and it is just, it's almost like just hanging in the atmosphere. But it was so weighted on Black women that we just all collectively took a sigh and said, you know, I need to rest. I've got to find rest somewhere. So let's talk about rest. I've noticed more women in our community pulling back, resting unapologetically, and refusing to grind themselves into the ground, but there's still guilt, right?
Mm,
I know for myself, I just left the corporate world last year. It's actually been a year now, right?
mm,
And I didn't even know I was carrying that type of toxicity around and trying to navigate my way through it until after I was out, and I just felt like, okay, I'm free from that. You know, this should be okay. And my husband kept saying to me, I'm recently married, only been married for a year now, and he kept saying to me, you just, babe, you're gonna have to relax. You need to relax. It was the hardest thing ever for me to do, was to even understand or comprehend what a soft life was, to
mm,
even accept it.
mm.
And I felt guilty because I was like, I should be working. I've seen people work. You know, I don't have the luxury of just sitting up and just being me in the
That's
moment. You know, I
right. That's
didn't have that. And so for me, there was guilt there. There
mm,
was confusion there, a lot of uncomfortability there. I have taught myself, or should I say, embraced a softer lifestyle for myself. And one of the things, I'm still learning, I'm still embracing it. But just taking moments to even take a nap, girl, you tired. Take a nap.
hello.
Like, you
Hello.
know, that was hard. I didn't
Mm,
understand. Like, I'm tired, but the fact that I'm fatigued makes me feel like I'm lazy.
mhm, mhm,
But I
mhm.
know I need to take a nap, but I don't
Yes.
want to take a nap, because if I take a nap, then I'm justifying the laziness. Like, it just,
Mm,
it is
yes.
so crazy. So my question is, how do we help Black women unlearn that guilt and see rest as a right, and not only as a right, but as a necessity to our health?
That's right. That's right. It's so important because and you use the right word. It's unlearning because the grinding that we do, how we overwork our bodies, and our minds, is something. It's a learned behavior, right? And it's something that's been passed down because I remember, even as a child, I remember hearing all the time from the elders, well, we have to work 10 times harder and we have to teach
Yes.
10 times better, and and so this is all of this wearing ourselves down to the bone is
Mm,
learned behavior.
mhm.
And it wasn't until I got older and I started realizing, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to really relax and how to rest and relax and really and truly treat your body
Yeah.
the way it is supposed to be. That is also learned.
Mhm.
And so I have been taking time to make sure that like you said, doing the unlearning, but then learning that other behavior. How do I learn how to have this kind of spiritual Sabbath existence? I have
Yeah.
a beautiful woman at my church. She's so lovely. And she talks about, we need to learn how to have to dwell in like this Sabbath spirituality, right? You know what I'm saying?
Good. I
How,
love that.
yes, how do we literally saturate ourselves, in these kinds of behaviors that are feeding our spirits and feeding our bodies? And one of the things I look at, womanist theology is really good about telling us that Black women's bodies are the site of divine revelation and divine power. And therefore, it should be then, our bodies should be treated with that love, that care, that respect. you know? And
Hmm.
so yeah, so we really do have to do that. We have to see ourselves differently, because we have kind of these cultural kinds of scripts that are playing in our minds, and
Indeed.
our cultural scripts have us seeing ourselves as machines. And I even hear
Hmm.
people talk about themselves, as if, the body is a machine. It's like, no, 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 no. This is a divine creation,
Yes.
you know, that really and truly has to be um, loved. It has to be cared for. It has to rest. Yeah,
Yes. It
yeah,
has to be nurtured. On a
that's it.
recent show, I was on a recent episode, about 2 episodes ago, I talked about tending to your garden, and it was a spiritual revelation that I got in meditation.
Mm,
Spirit was just really telling me, like, let's go out to the garden. Like, that was the visualization in the meditation. I was out in the garden, and there were these different plots, right? So I had the business career plot, I had the marriage plot, I had the relationships, friendships plot, I had the self plot, and in
mm,
the plots I could see weeds.
mm,
And that's where the frustration was, because just like any garden, you must tend to your garden. You have to nurture your garden. So, what are you doing every day? Like, you got to come in, you got to pull the weeds. That's the unlearning. You
yeah,
pull the weeds, you make sure that you clear it up, but you have to water it. You have to till the soil. You
yeah,
have to plant new seeds.
that's
Like,
right.
all of those things. Like, I remember, I'm from the country, so I
Yeah.
remember having to go out, and my mom would plant collard greens, and
Mm,
you want those collard greens, but you got to go out there, and we would have to clean off those leaves because those
mm,
grubs were all over it.
yes,
And
yes,
I hated cleaning the leaves. But if you wanted those delicious collard greens, that's something you had to do. And
yes,
so that idea of nurturing your garden, and what you were saying about what did you say, a Sabbath
yeah.
day,
Sabbath
like,
and spirituality.
I love that idea. I have been, for the past maybe 4 or 5 years. One of the things I fell in love with was Oprah's Super Soul Sundays, and I
Yes,
just made it a thing. I was like, oh, it's a Super Soul Sunday for me. And
yeah.
it literally, I would start the day like Super Soul Sunday. I would watch Super Soul Sunday as if
Mhm.
it was my service.
Yeah, yeah,
And then throughout the day, like, it was totally about myself, and listening to myself, and nurturing myself, and what is it that self needed. And that is so, so, so very important for Black women and our health,
yes,
especially. We had
yes.
an episode with Black Girl Vitamins, and we were talking about how, vitamin deficiencies, um, vitamin D is being number one for Black women. And then we talked about anemia and things of that nature,
Mhm,
which
mhm,
tie in great with this episode, because my issue with anemia, which we discussed on the show, but
mhm.
my issue with anemia, I was going to a doctor all these years, and no doctor ever told me that I was anemic, right? So
Uh-huh.
I'm just kind of putting it in my head, because my mom is like, well, we've always been that way, I guess. And I'm
Mm,
thinking it's hereditary,
mm,
until I
mm,
found, during the pandemic, there was a Black doctor that
mm.
saw me, and
Yeah,
she said to me, sis, you're anemic, right? Like,
that's it.
and I'm like, I just assumed it's natural because my mom has always been this way or whatever. And she's like, but you don't have to be,
That's right.
and immediately she said, you don't have to be. Within 15 months, I was no longer anemic. She's like,
Mm,
hereditary means you don't respond to iron supplements. You're responding to iron, which means it's not hereditary.
that's
So,
yes, yes,
and she got rid of it in 15 months. Now, I'm 45 years old. Nobody had ever, none of
yeah.
the doctors, but this was my first Black doctor. This was my
Mm,
first Black female doctor.
mhm.
And so, having someone pay attention to me,
Yes,
know
yes,
about me as a Black woman,
yes,
um, definitely helps. So what your book is about is just like so important, because there are so many health disparities, and all of this is tied together in the way that you lay it out in the book, which is something I just absolutely, I love the way you tie those things together. One of your quotes, I have this one written down here. Mainstream bioethics doesn't center our lived experiences. A womanist framework insists that health must include justice, joy, and rest. Expound on that for us.
Yes, yes, it is so important that we we take the time to step out of the cultural, these cultural scripts, cultural frameworks that put us into the mindset, um, that allows us to even devalue ourselves,
Right.
right? And so my book is really, really showing how important it is for us to, if we were to have an adequate understanding of what justice means in human relations, it requires that we start with the needs of some of the most vulnerable people among us, right? And by listening to those of us who are among the most vulnerable, those of us who are minoritized in this culture, by listening to us, you get a fuller sense of what these concepts of justice, of love, dignity, we get a fuller concept of what they mean, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And my book is demonstrating, the significance of opening up this space for us to have these conversations about how our spirituality, our gender, and health, how they're all really important considerations, right?
Yeah.
In health disparities that Black women are experiencing disproportionately.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. It's so good. It's so good. It's about liberation, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Mhm, mhm.
So quickly, I want to talk about, because we did talk about faith a bit, but let's talk about, how do you believe that spirituality can become a healing tool again?
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes. In the midst of all of the kind of chaos that we have all been experiencing,
Hmm.
uh, recently, one of the places where I've really gotten so much joy and peace and comfort, right? Um, is really digging into the wisdom of the ancestors, right?
Yes.
So I have been taking time to revisit Sister Maya Angelou, Brother James Baldwin, and those old church mothers who loved me to death when I was a baby. It was the sweetest thing when I was a young girl growing up. And I've been really kind of looking at this legacy of care
Hmm.
that I was able to see firsthand, in our Black faith communities,
Yeah.
and I still see it even today. I'm working. I'm going to a church here locally where we have a health and wellness ministry,
Hmm.
and we're leaning into, and drawing on that legacy of care that our faith communities have always had. Now, faith communities are not perfect. Don't get twisted what I'm saying. I'm not
Right.
saying they're
Right.
perfect. Some of them got real bad theology. So, you know, so we got to be real and hold our communities accountable, right? For what they have done, but also left undone when it comes to the wellness, of Black folk. But these faith communities have a beautiful legacy of care, and the driving forces behind that legacy, those church mothers,
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
African American women. That's why I'm like, look, let let so the 92%, yes, get some rest, because we got work to do, right? We have to get to work, because that is how we have thrived as a people, because these foot soldiers, I call them in the book, these foot soldiers, these women, these church women, they were raising money for Black hospitals when there were none, for Black nursing schools when there were none,
Yes.
and so that is why I am okay with us saying, wait, I got to take care of myself, because you do have to step back, care for yourself, because you got work to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are absolutely, we are our answer. And
Yeah.
so I get excited about really leaning into that, to that legacy that we have of foot soldiers who are getting to work to make sure that our communities thrive and flourish and survive.
Right, right. Thank you so much for that, because God does delight in our wholeness, and sometimes choosing ourselves is the right thing, it's the holiest thing you can
Mhm.
do. So
Yes,
I
absolutely.
appreciate that. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for this conversation. I want to thank you for your book. I see you have your book behind you. Can you show that to the audience? Because
Yes.
I need you guys to pick this. I love the book. It is if you're one of those people like me, you love to have that sit down moment and discuss a good book with somebody
Yes.
that opens up conversations such as this,
Yes.
because you have so well weaved together those three topics,
Mm.
because they are related, and we're having the conversations, we don't even know we're having that conversation,
Yes.
but it is laid out in this book. So
Yeah.
guys, pick up Womanist Bioethics. I will have the link in the description. I will have the link on the website. um, so Dr. Wilson, tell everybody where they can find you and
Yeah.
learn more about what you're doing.
Yes, please find me at, I have a website, wylinDWilson.com. It's just no spaces or anything, just wylinDWilson.com. Please come to that website, because I do have some resources as well, regarding our health, not just Black women's health, physical health, but our mental health as well, because
Yes.
that's a topic that we don't really dig into the way we should. But yeah, please go there and find resources. And the book is available on Amazon, on Barnes and Nobles. So yes.
Awesome. Well, before we go, guys, I want to leave the listeners with a little soul work. So here's our affirmation as we close. My rest is not a luxury, it is my resistance. My peace is a revolution.
Mm,
I want you guys to take that with you,
yeah.
family. If this episode spoke to your spirit, I want you to share it with another sister who needs this reminder that rest is your birthright. And the revolution, it starts when you choose yourself.
Mm,
If you need help embracing your soft life, make sure you guys schedule a one-on-one coaching session with me, and together we'll take that journey. And you'll find that link in the show description, as well as everything else that you need in the show notes. Until next time, guys, peace and blessings.